Welcome back. We're going to go ahead now and look at our Unit 4 review, Part 2, Adding and Subtracting Fractions. Now this is much like what we've already done. The only difference is that we're going to be solving word problems that are involving fractions with our unlike denominators. We're going to go ahead and only look at side 1. We will look at the right side of the paper, and I want to remind you that what I'm doing on one side is going to have the same type of question on the opposite side, just a different response mechanism. So you may want to, after I've done one side, pause and go ahead and process the other side. Okay, so let's look at the first one. The first one says, Deidre is making popcorn strings for decorations. She brought 2 packages of cording that have 15 2/3 feet of cording. How much cording did she buy? Okay, so the very first thing we do is we always use cubes. So we're going to start out by circling our numbers. So we have 15 2/3 feet of cording. We also have another number which might appear to be hidden. We have the number 2 because she bought 2 packages. So the next part is the U. Underline the question. The question is asking me, how much cording did she buy? So then I need to think, okay, well, what is going to be my operation? If I want to know how much cording did she buy, what operation word do I have in my word problem? Let's see. She wants to make the decorations. She bought, she bought them. So we're not getting rid of, we're adding to it. So this word bought is actually telling me to add. So I've done my C, circling. I did my U, underline the question. I did my B to box the operation word. And the last one I'm going to do is my evaluate an expression. So let's see. Again, the things I know. I know she bought 2 packages, and those packages were 15 2/3. Oh, so that's telling me to add 15 2/3, and I'm going to add it 2 times because she bought 2 packages. So I'm on my separate sheet of paper going to go ahead and write my expression 15 2/3 plus 15 2/3. Now this is a pretty simple question because I already have my like denominators, so now on cues I'm going to go ahead and solve. Okay, so first of all, when I'm adding fractions with like denominators, I'm going to look at my numerator and just add them together. So 2/3 and 2/3 is 4/3. After I've added my fraction parts, I'm going to look at my whole numbers, 15 and 15. And I tell the students all the time that if you do not know that, go ahead and rewrite it going up and down and add it that way vertically. 5 plus 5 is 10. Drop my 0. Regroup my 1 into my tens place. 1, 2, 3. My answer is 30 whole. Now I look at that fraction that I came up with, that mixed number, and I see that I have a whole number and then I have a fraction part. But when I look at that fraction part, I notice that my numerator is greater than my denominator. Because this number is larger than my denominator, it means that it's more than one whole. So I actually need to regroup one whole into my whole number. Now in this instance, one whole is 3/3. So I'm going to subtract 3/3 from my numerator and regroup that into my whole number. So now I've added one whole and taken that away from my fraction part. So 30 plus 1 is 31. 4/3 minus that 3/3 that I regrouped leaves me with 1/3. So my answer is 31 1/3. Now going back to my question, I see that my response mechanism is multiple choice, which means there's only going to be one correct answer. So I'm just going to go ahead and scan and find my correct answer. In this instance, 31 1/3 feet. My answer is E. If you would like to process this information, go ahead and pause the video now and try your side on the left. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and look at the second question. It says, in Miss Walker's class was collecting food for the local food bank. The first week they collected 23 9/10 pounds of food. The second week they collected 51 1/5 pounds of food. How much more pounds of food did Miss Walker's class collect in the second week as compared to the first week? Again, I'm going to go through cubes. I'm going to start out by circling my important numbers and what they represent. So I have 23 9/10, and that was represented by the first week. The next number I see is 51 1/5, which is indicative of the second week, the amount she collected. So I've underlined my important numbers, I've circled my important numbers as well as they represent. So now I'm going to go ahead and read the question. How many more pounds of food did Miss Walker's class collect in the second week as compared to the first week? So now I've done my circling, I've done my underlining, and now I'm going to move on to my B box, my operation word. Now in this instance, students might try to join the 2 pounds together, but if I look back at the question, it says how many more, so how many more is going to be part of my operation, as well as the word compare. Now these words are telling me to actually subtract the second week from the first week. So now I'm going to go ahead and evaluate an expression. So referring to my word problem, I know that I have 51 1/5 in my second week. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. 51 1/5. And then we said that I'm subtracting because it said how many more and compared. And now going back to my word problem, when I look at the when I look at the first week, she collected 23 9/10 pounds of food. So now I'm going to subtract that to show a comparison of how many more pounds she collected. So now that I have my problem, I have circled, I have underlined, I have boxed, I have evaluated an expression, and now I'm going to solve and show work. So the first thing I should notice is my denominators. I have a denominator of 5 and a denominator of 10. In order to solve this, I need to have like denominators. So I need to figure out what is going to be my common denominator between 5 and 10. If I did not know it, I could list my multiples. So 5, 10, 15, 20, and again, that pattern can continue on. And then for 10, I have 10, 20, 30, 40. And what I should notice is I want that least common multiple. So I have a 10 here, and I also have a 10 above, so that is going to be my least common multiple that I'm going to use to create my least common denominator. So I'm turning both of these into 10s. So I'm going to go ahead and drop down my whole numbers, 51. I know I want a denominator of 10 minus 23, and again a denominator of 10. Okay, so now I need to figure out what did I do to go from fifths to tenths. That's right, I multiplied by 2. And I know that what I do to the bottom, I must also do to the top. So I'm multiplying my numerator by 2 as well. 1 times 2 is 2. So now I've created an equivalent fraction. 1/5 is equivalent to 2 tenths. Okay, now let's look at the next one. I went from tenths to tenths. Oh, well, I noticed that the denominator is already at 10, which is where I need it, so I'm just going to drop it down 9 tenths. And now I'm going to look at my numbers and I'm going to try to subtract. And I'm going to start with my fraction part first, so I have 2 tenths minus 9 tenths. Now, the reason why we start with our fraction part first is because it has the least value, the same as we would go from our ones to our tenths to our hundredths and so on. So again, 2 minus 9. What I notice is that I cannot do 2 minus 9. So what can I do to subtract these? Okay, I can borrow from my whole, and I can turn my 51 into a 50. And I'm going to add that 1 whole into a fraction. So what is 1 whole as a fraction? That's right, it's 10 tenths. I'm really just adding this denominator into my numerator. So 2 and 10 now makes that 12 tenths. And again, it is 12 tenths because I regrouped 1 whole, which was 10 tenths, plus the 2 tenths that I already had. Now I'm going to go ahead and write minus 23 and 9 tenths. I didn't do anything with this, so I'm just dropping it all down. So now I can look comparatively. 12 minus 9. That's right, 12 minus 9 is 3. And my denominator stays the same. So now I'm going to subtract my whole numbers 50 and 23. Again, if I need to rewrite it going vertically, no problem. Rewrite it going vertically. Doesn't matter how much work I show, how much time it takes. What does matter is that I take that time to get the right answer. So 0 minus 3. That's That's right, I can't do it. So I'm going to borrow from my tens place, which becomes now 4. And I'm going to add that to 10 into my ones place. So now I have 10 minus 3 is 7, and 4 minus 2 is 2. So my whole number is 27 and 3/10. Now I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to look back at my question sheet, and this is just an equation editor. So I'm just going to fill in my number, 27, leave a space, and then I'm going to represent my fraction. On the computers, we'll have to represent it with 3 and then a slash sign and then tenths. 27 and 3/10. Okay, and now I'm going to look at the last one for tonight. The last one for tonight says, Mr. Slappy and Miss Slappy each baked a tray of lasagna to share with teachers in their grade. So sweet. Where's mine? Miss Slappy's lasagna is cut into 6 and 2 sections are eaten. Mr. Slappy's lasagna is cut into 8s and some are eaten. They deliver the leftovers to Miss Price. Miss Price received 1 5/10 trays of lasagna. How many sections of Mr. Slappy's lasagna were eaten? Okay, so this has a lot of information, and so I really need to chunk it and look at one piece at a time. So the first piece of information, again going through cubes, is I see that Miss Slappy cuts hers into 6. She cuts her lasagna into 6, and 2 sections of that are eaten. Now Mr. Slappy's lasagna is cut into 8s, and he eats some. It doesn't tell me how much, so that's actually what I'm going to sort of be solving for. How many sections did he eat? And then the next number that I see is they delivered leftovers, and that is 1 5/10, and that number is representative of the leftovers. So I've circled my numbers and what they're representative of. Now I'm going to go to underline. I'm going to underline how many sections of Mr. Slappy's lasagna were eaten. So now I'm sort of looking for an operation word. However, there are several operations that I'm going to need to do to solve this. The very first thing I need to do is I really need to look at each part and decide what they represent, keeping in mind that I'm solving for how many were eaten. So what I notice here is that 1 5/12 is leftovers, which is the part that was not eaten. I need to join together the parts that were not eaten to equal 1 5/12. However, it says that Miss Slappy cut 6 and 2 were eaten. So while you might think, well, that's 2 6 that were eaten, I need to know how much were left over to add together to equal 1 5/12. So if 2 were eaten out of the 6, that actually means that 4/6 were left over. Now look at Mr. Slappy's. He cuts his into 8s and some are eaten. So I have no clue how much are left over. I'm just going to put an N, and I know that there are 8. So now I'm going to take Miss Slappy's leftovers, join them with Mr. Slappy's leftovers, and see what is the missing number for how many slices he ate, and then reverse it to go back to how much, reverse it, this is how much he has left over. I want to reverse it to go back to how much we're eating. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to join together. This is how much Miss Slappy had left over. She has 4/6, so I'm going to put just a C for her first name, and then plus we know that Mr. Slappy, he ate some and he had some left over, but I have no clue how much, but I do know that it was cut into 8s. So we're going to put an A for his first name, just so I can kind of sort through what's going on. And then I know that Miss Price, P for her, is getting 1 5/12 of their leftovers. So now what I always tell them is anytime we're solving for a missing number, we're going to take that fraction out. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as 4/6 plus something is equal to 1 5/12. Now what I need to do is look at my denominators. I have 6 and 12, and I need to figure out how I can create a common denominator. 6 can actually be made into equivalent of 12, so I'm going to turn these both into 12s. So something 12s plus blank is equal to 1 and 5 12ths. And I went ahead and wrote this whole thing because it's already in 12ths, so I'm just dropping it down. Going back here, what did I do to go from 6 to 12ths? I multiplied by 2. What I do to the bottom, I must also do to the top. So I'm going to multiply my numerator of 4 by 2 as well, which is 8. Now what I do know about this missing fraction here is that it has to have a denominator of 12 in order for me to add it. So I need to figure out what can be added to 8 to equal 5. Well, what I realize is I can't add a number to 8 to equal 5. So what I need to do is I need to borrow from that whole, get rid of that one whole, and regroup those 12 12ths into my fraction part. So I'm taking that one whole and I'm just adding the 12 12ths into my fraction. So now I have 8 12ths plus something 12ths is equal to 5 plus 12 is 17 12ths. So 8 plus what equals 17? Very good. 9. 8 plus 9 equals 17. So I've now figured out how much that he has eaten because Miss Slappy ate this much. No, left over. Miss Slappy had this much left over. Mr. Slappy has this much left over, and together they have delivered this much of their leftovers to Miss Price. So what I need to do now is I need to take it back to my original fraction. My original denominator was 8. However, this question is written in 12ths. I'm not really sure how I can go from 8 to 12, so I need to figure out, well, what else do I know about 9 12ths? Do they share a common factor? Well, you know what? I know that both of them can be divided by 3. And I'm going to create an equivalent fraction now of 3/4. So 9 12ths is equivalent to 3/4. Now let me go back and check that against my original fraction. Can I go from 4ths to 8ths? Well, yes, I can, by dividing by 2. Or by multiplying by 2. Whew, that was scary there for a minute. 4 times 2 is 8. And what I do to the bottom, I also want to do to my top. So 3 times 2 is 6. Therefore, your missing part is 6. However, that 6 is representative of what he has left over. Miss Slappy has this much left over, Mr. Slappy has that much left over, and in total they give this much to Miss Price. The question does not ask how much Mr. Slappy has left over. If I go back to the question, it says how much has he eaten. So I've determined that he has 6/8 that he had left over. So I need to figure out if he had one whole pizza and he ate 6/8, how much, or he had left over 6/8, how much did he actually eat? So I actually know that 8/8 is equivalent to one whole. So 8/8 minus 6/8 is equal to 2/8, which means that Mr. Slappy ate 2 out of the 8 slices. So let me go ahead and go back to my answer choices, and I see 2 slices. Let me select C. Go ahead now and try the one beside it on your own.